I hope I'm audible. Madam Minister, am I audible at your end? Niharji, are we audible?
I think there is a lot of echo. All mics need to be switched off, otherwise not audible. Yeah.
Niharji, am I audible, please?
Audible now.
Perfect. So should we start?
Please.
Okay. Madam, thanks a lot for joining us. In fact, it is a proud privilege for us to be really hosting this webinar, wherein we are really talking about movement towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. In fact, we have a very special guest today with us, and none other than Srimati Smriti Iraniji, who is the Minister for Textiles in Government of India, who's been instrumental in doing something exceptional in this country with following this indigenous supply chain strategy. If you really look at how things were in the past, in March, we hardly knew what this industry is all about, especially the PPEs. We were not competitive, we were not innovating in it. But something that actually happened in last 9 months is exceptional. And that exceptional thing is that we have actually been able to create an industry, which is a world-beating industry in the last 9 months. And if you really talk about world-beating, I say like there are two things which actually become very, very prominent. One is, of course, we have tried to compete on cost, but the other one is that how you've actually started to compete on quality. So what we've really seen here is that if there is a will, there is a strong way, or there is absolutely a way to really take forward this whole idea of making India competitive, making India productive. And so, somebody who was instrumental in this was the Ministry of Textiles and Ministry of Health. But, and of course, if you really look at it, what we have been able to do is that we have actually documented this great effort and then created a case study. And I would request all of you to really look at the case study. It's actually a very powerful documentation of how things and how steps were taken. A couple of things which I think I should talk about, like one of them is the whole ecosystem approach that has actually got created. An ecosystem approach in terms of saying that the cluster approach that was there. And then, of course, the other thing was that how we were able to bring together most of the actors, or all the actors, which included government, which included not-for-profit organizations, the testing agencies, and everybody to really make sure that this can actually function. And given the challenges that the country was facing in terms of the lockdown, not having movement of goods, there were severe restrictions on people. So how the government actually did something out there was absolutely very, very powerful. And this has also been the basis for what we would actually call as the Atmanirbhar Bharat. And when a lot of people debate what is Atmanirbhar Bharat or whatever, from my point of view, it is about making India competitive and making India innovative and things. And that's that journey which we are really looking at. And then I think everybody says that a good crisis should not, or a crisis should not go waste. And this is where what we have seen is that how government has actually used this crisis to really create something very, very powerful and very telling. So without further ado, I think we will just dive into the conversation and go ahead. In fact, first and foremost, I would like to request Gautamji to give his remarks. Gautamji, I would request you to keep your remarks to about 4 minutes, please. Gautamji, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit. Madam Smriti Iraniji, Secretary Ravi Kapoor, Mr. Dash, and everybody else on the panel today. Real pleasure and privilege to be on this panel. And Dr. Kapoor, thank you for inviting me to be your opening batsman in today's event. I'm delighted that a discussion on Atmanirbhar is being organized specifically by the Institute of Competitiveness. And the Institute of Competitiveness itself is backed by leading management gurus such as Michael Porter and leading institutions like the Harvard Business School. I must confess that speaking for myself, I had some serious doubts about Atmanirbhar when it was announced by the Government of India. Did this mean a return to the protectionist era of the 80s, where inefficient domestic industries could survive behind a wall of protection? Was this linked to India's withdrawal from RCEP? Was this a recognition of the fact that India had been a loser in most of the FTAs we had signed, with the trade deficit with the partner countries actually increasing? Or that in spite of the push towards Make in India, the contribution of Indian manufacturing in GDP had actually decreased from 19% to 16% of GDP, far away from the target of 25% which government had set? These were the questions in my mind. But based on talks with senior members of government, including some people in this very august panel today, I realized that Atmanirbhar is one of a mix of policies, all designed by government to work synergistically to increase the competitiveness of Indian manufacturing industry in the medium to long term. Government has already made far-reaching changes in various areas, in labor policies, in the MSME sector, which is sought to be strengthened by so many far-reaching announcements. Government has recently identified champion sectors, including our own textiles and apparel, and specific schemes to designed to take these sectors off the ground and increase scale and increase competitiveness are currently under work and detailed discussion with our ministry. We hope that the protection therefore conferred under Atmanirbhar is calibrated, is time bound, and has the very clear objective of getting industry to be competitive, not just to protect industry for the sake of protection. We also hope that Government of India works with state governments. State governments are playing an increasingly large role in the industrial ecosystem, and it's extremely important to rope them in. So we hope that Government of India works with state governments to ensure that problems of infrastructure, logistics, ease of doing business, manufacturing ecosystems are addressed in mission mode across the line. Needless to say, industry has a very large role to play in all of the above. We cannot just leave everything to government. With the policy framework being put in place, it is our job to step up and do our bit to ensure scale and competitiveness. As Dr. Amit Kapoor pointed out, our recent experience of government and industry working in mission mode in the PPE sector is very instructive. When the realization of the scale of the crisis hit India in February or March, the Ministry of Health roped in the Ministry of Textiles to rapidly scale up production of PPE in the country. The leadership shown by our Honorable Minister of Textiles, Secretary Textiles, Joint Secretary Textiles, so many individuals in the ministry, so many other departments which they pulled in, is completely exemplary. They pulled in industry leaders from apparel, technical textiles, worked shoulder to shoulder with them to pull out all the stops to ensure PPE, which was, as Dr. Kapoor said, it was a word we didn't even understand in March. I remember when Mr. Ravi Kapoor called up and said, you guys need to manufacture PPE. I actually asked him, I said, what is PPE? It was not something we were completely familiar with. But in the next few weeks, the production started across India. And in the next 3 months, we were producing PPE at a very high scale and very acceptable international quality standards. We were in a crisis situation, and we have shown time and again that we respond best when our backs are against the wall. And we were doing it in a very, very difficult situation during lockdown. And whether it was organizing flights to ferry material, using our missions overseas to aid in purchase and transport of machinery, we did all this in record time. Starting at fledgling levels, we grew to be the second largest PPE industry in the world. It's an amazing story of collaboration under the most incredibly difficult circumstances. Dr. Kapoor, Harvard Business School would do well to document this in a case study. I submit that let's not wait for the next crisis to work well together. Let's work together in the same mission mode to ensure that the PPE industry, a strategic industry for Atmanirbhar in India, remains competitive and not only meets India's requirements, but also becomes a supplier of choice to the world. I look forward to hearing our esteemed panelists' views on this subject today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gautamji. Thanks a lot. And really setting the tone for the interaction in terms of like what has really happened and how various steps were taken by the government. Sandeepji, in fact, over to you. Sandeepji, over to you for your points. In fact, you have been actually an instrumental person in terms of driving all this and really became part of the initial set of team who really took it up. Sandeep ji, over to you.
Thank you, Amit ji and Gautam ji, for your comments. I want to recognize the support and encouragement from Smriti ji, Ravi ji, Nihar ji over the past months. It's been a remarkable collaboration. That too at a war footing. I have to say, facilitated by the Ministry of Textiles and also other departments like the Department of Pharmaceuticals, which in our case resulted in the production of high quality testing swabs at 10% of the cost of the imported ones. And that too in record time of 10 days. And that too in the very early days of the pandemic. And this was again possible with a partnership ecosystem with manufacturing from our MSMEs, scientific expertise of NIV, ICMR, DHR, regulatory guidance from CDSCO, material expertise from Reliance, and R&D quality and scale manufacturing expertise from J&J. Now, from my experience of global innovation and commercialization, I'll try to quickly summarize where I see opportunities for Bharat to become not only self-reliant as a consumer of PPEs, but also a competitive global player. So first, the market baseline. Roadmap par hum kahan hain? So Amit ji from the Institute of Competitiveness report, the global industry for PPEs is emerging to be close to $60 billion, 4.5 lakh crores industry over the next 3 years, growing in high single digits. In India, it's a small industry. It's roughly 750, 800 crores, growing close to 20%. So therefore, it's very clear as part of our Atmanirbharta mandate that a bigger opportunity is to be an export powerhouse. So what needs to be true? So I'll discuss this in 3 points. Number one is the end-to-end value chain. Number two is global stockpiles of PPEs as insurance. And number three is the globally harmonized quality standards and design thinking. So let's talk about the first one, end-to-end value chain with a portfolio approach. So we are today catering to basic PPE kits or class 1 and class 2 per ISO 16603 standards. And these are for normal safety of healthcare workers and some other industrial applications. There's an opportunity for us to elevate the manufacturing to high value class 3 kits, including body coveralls, which are critical for not only pandemics, but also for other hazardous situations across multiple industries. So that's one. Within this, we must modernize our manufacturing, high speed, high tech supply chains, ecosystem of indigenous machine manufacturers, specialty textile leaders, global partners, research institutions like IITs, government testing labs, and clusters of MSME manufacturers and high quality suppliers, as we have in Bengaluru and Tirupur, which is a good start. And all of this can be enabled by the leadership of the Ministry of Textiles. And I have to compliment Ministry of Textiles because it's already taken some positive steps to support the industry here, including removing of the export barriers, capital subsidies to MSMEs, and production-linked incentives for technical textiles. So that was one. Second is the global stockpiles of PPEs as an insurance. In Jan 2020, like Gautam ji said, we had not heard of PPEs. We had 2.75 lakh PPE kits that were COVID ready. By the end of May, we were producing twice as many on a daily basis. Now, the lockdowns have given many countries time to prepare, but not all emergencies are going to give us time. So with Ministry of Family and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Textiles, Ministry of Commerce and Industries collaboration, I think there's an opportunity where India can lead discussions with the WHO and other organizations for really entering into multi-decade stockpile deals of basic and advanced PPEs with key countries and states. There are many analyses that are done that stocking an adequate PPE stockpile ahead of time can cost only 15 to 25% of the pandemic inflated prices that countries are paying right now. What is worth noting is that if you maintain these stocks, it will be cheaper than real-time purchases, even if it's not needed for another 30 to 35 years. So think of this as advanced purchase of PPE stockpiles, just like countries are strategically creating oil and gas reserves. It's a national insurance, national security. And the cost of the stockpile will be equivalent to the insurance premium that India can charge. So India could very well become the global readiness insurance plan for all pandemics and emergencies worldwide. So that's point number 2. And point number 3 is the use of globally harmonized quality standards and design thinking, which Gautamji also said. I meet healthcare workers in my job who have to wear PPEs 14 hours a day to deliver patient care. And often they have to sacrifice efficiency of motion, precision, comfort due to poorly designed and unreliable PPEs. India needs to enable a strong quality assurance and a quality control process among all PPE manufacturers. We can merge, look at the experts on this panel. We can merge fiber science, apparel design technologies, industrial design and human factor principles, which can bring consistency to the quality and an end user experience and acceptance of the PPEs manufactured in India. So I'll just conclude by saying we have the momentum on our side, and the time is now to activate the ecosystem partnerships. India as a global powerhouse in PPEs and other specialty textile applications. Is that a question? Mumkin to hai, right? So with that, again, thank you, and thank you, Amit ji, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Like, this was fascinating in terms of like how you really weaved the whole idea in. In fact, we'll very quickly move to Puneet ji. Puneet ji, your view as to what we have done, how we have done, and what more can actually be done as we really move forward and making India more competitive in this arena and beyond the industry that we're actually operating in. Puneet ji.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Madam Smriti ji, Mr. Ravi Kapoor, Mr. Dash, all the panelists, it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to be part of this event. I think as the panelists before me have spoken, we're coming off this wonderful case study where we've seen the power of what can happen when government, when industry, sort of steps out of their comfort zones and cuts across different departments, different companies, different types of producers, and comes together. The result is something spectacular that no one thought possible. I think most of the key issues have been covered by Gautam and Mr. Makkar, but I would like to sort of draw attention to one point. I think in India, and this is more, a symptom of the way the industry has been thinking, we've been defending our strengths for a very, very long time. And we have not really stepped beyond the comfort zone. So I think this is the first instance where, we've really seen that in the space of apparel and textiles, at least from where I come. The second most important thing to recognize is that, we are at a cusp where India is sitting as, the biggest viable alternative to China to become the factory of the world, not only for regular textiles, but especially for technical textiles, of which PPE is a great, is an integral part. And the encouragement that we have received in the last 6 months around the enthusiasm and all round thinking with which the ministry has actually approached technical textiles is extremely encouraging. And with this case study, industry stepping out of their comfort zone and the ministry supporting and batting on the front foot like they've been doing so far, I think all the stars are aligned for us to do something really special. What does one need actually to become the global powerhouse? We need an ecosystem approach, as Mr. Makkar had mentioned before. So raw material, manufacturing, and policy all aligned. And that is now happening. We need extremely good quality control so that we're not just cost competitive, we are cost competitive along with best quality. And all the discussions around making and attracting the world's best talent and the world's best resources to make the best testing hub in the country is extremely welcome, and we will be very, very encouraged to participate in making that happen. And so now, with all the sort of planning aspects taken care of, I think the only thing that is left is to execute, which we've shown we can do. And so we have to continue this momentum. And I'm very happy that such conferences and webinars are being organized, because these are the key softer aspects that both the industry and all the other stakeholders need to take on board to ensure that the very possible vision of making India a manufacturing hub for the world, for PPEs, for technical textiles, and for textiles in general, is actually realized. So that's what I had to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Puneet. This is fascinating. In fact, very quickly, we'll move on to Raviji. Raviji, you've been instrumental in really getting all this together. You were a person who was able to get the vision in place along with all the stakeholders in the ministry. Raviji, over to you for your views and how things have really happened and materialized and fructified.
Honorable Minister, Textiles, friends from the industry, my colleagues from the Ministry of Textiles. I think, first of all, let me compliment Mr. Kapoor and his team for documenting the efforts of the Ministry of Textiles and the government in general in terms of the manufacture of PPEs. We have been, and Minister has been egging on us, saying that we must document this and we must share this, and so is the Prime Minister's office saying that we must, because these are historical times, and we just forget after maybe 6 months, 8 months down the lane. Quite a bit of this has already been forgotten. So must compliment the Institute of Competitiveness and Mr. Kapoor in particular and his team for doing this job. Having said that, yes, as rightly said by the speakers before, PP in the country was never manufactured. It was only used in virology labs for researchers, and the total consumption of PPs in this country was about 50,000, and 3 companies, global companies, were importing and supplying. And therefore, this terminology of PP was, as rightly said, completely alien to us. So we didn't even know what PP, nobody knew what PP looked like. And of course, then the journey started, and under the strong leadership of the minister, she gave us completely full hand and free hand to work, and completely stood behind us. I think it is really worth documenting this effort, that India has created an industry where none existed. And the beauty of this industry, the creation of this industry is, and that's a very important part, that we have not given a single naira subsidy to any manufacturer. This is a very important lesson of what we did was just connected the dots. What we did, that these dots were connected at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were connected at 3 o'clock in the night. We came out of our comfort zone. I'm sure most of the players here were getting phone calls from my side, personally, me at 7 o'clock in the morning. Minister used to call up at 6 o'clock in the morning to find out what has happened. At 10 o'clock, I used to check up. So everything, what we did was shake up the system, connect the dots, and facilitate the entire ecosystem. My serious salute and serious appreciation for the members of the industry. While my officers did a phenomenal job, it is unparalleled job which the entire team of textile officers across, from Bangalore, from Bombay, from entire country did. But I think the whole credit at the end goes to the industry for having risen from absolutely nowhere, taking up the challenge, believing in itself that it can do it, And with the governmental support, as I said, as the facilitative support from the government, industry rose. This is a classic example of Indian entrepreneurship. And why Indian, if it goes to prove that if Indian entrepreneur is provided the right ecosystem and supportive policy environment, the supportive regulatory environment, it is raring to go. I mean, I think one of the biggest lessons of this experiment was that all we need to do is to provide the ecosystem, provide the right kind of support. Government should be a real facilitator, as we did. This is a classic case of government facilitating. Believe me, I did not spend money. The ministry did not. We hardly spend money. We spend money on special flights. Yes, for sampling, we use the government machinery. I mean, there is a lot of inherent cost into that. We use the machinery to do whatever it could be. We used embassy, we used civil aviation ministry, we used railways, we used DRDO, we used Indian Ordnance Factory, we used HLL, all kinds of government machineries were mobilized. But at the end of the day, as I said, and the Prime Minister has in a meeting has told us, that this is a point which we must highlight, that how can we replicate this in other industries? What is that we need to do as a government so that PP is a story which is all over now. It's another year, it will be history. And people will just forget about it. But the newer industries, how do we do it? And I think, to cut it short, not very long, right now, as we sit, and as Puneet has just mentioned, we have made a very great, beautiful design for this ministry for a complete ecosystem for revamping of the textile sector in this country. And we are deliberately, as somebody rightly pointed out, we are deliberately pushing the industry out of its comfort zone, pushing them into man-made fiber, pushing them into technical textiles, because that is where the future is. We are creating an entire ecosystem through the PLI scheme, through the production link scheme, through Mitras, through removal of all barriers in the supply of raw materials, through a very facilitative textile policy. I think we have, again, connecting the dots in a larger way by setting up world-class labs in technical textile, So a whole new, brand new ecosystem is being conceived, not conceived, it's starting to getting implemented. I'm sure this will be implemented in full spirit. And if all goes well, my personal belief, I will not be there because I shall be hanging my boots, but I personally believe in 1 year's time, if all goes well, in 1 year's time, India's textile industry would be hugely kicking in a new direction. And we hope what we did in PPE would be done in the technical textiles, would be done in man-made fiber segment of this industry. Again, shaking them out of the zone of comfort where, you have been there. I remember Mr. Shaktivel when I called him first and told him, why don't you manufacture PPE? He says, sir, it's not possible, sir. We don't know how to do it. That was the response. And this was the response of most of the manufacturers. And Gautam said, so that Harish Ahuja said so. He said, sir, what is people? We can't do that. But each of them, believe me, today, South India, Coimbatore is a hub, is a major hub. Bangalore is a major hub for producing. These are all people who were shaken out of the system, brought into a new field, and they delivered. So with that, I hope in the next 1 year or so, 1 year and maybe 1 year plus, we are on the cusp of a major change in the textile sector in this country. All we need is the same response from the entrepreneurs, not cribbing for subsidies, not cribbing for increment, but becoming inherently competitive. We are trying to build you inherently competitive so that you don't require crutches to fight the world. Just as we did in the PPE, we didn't require any crutches to fight the world. And we produce the best at a very low cost. I think the same story needs to be repeated in the technical textile sector, in the man-made fiber segment. And I'm for one, I'm a chronic optimist as it is, but I think on this we are on the right track. And in 1 to 2 years' time, India's textile should be taking over. Thank you very much for giving me the time. And I think I've overshot the time. But I must once again thank the Honorable Minister for her leadership and my officers. We never work like this, but 24/7. Control room being in the office of the minister, office of the minister. This doesn't happen every day in the history of India's administration. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji. And I think again, it's been an honor for us to really document this effort, I must say, and it's been a great learning experience. And I think the world over, people should really look at following this example of how to really create an industry from scratch and how to really build it up. In fact, we have to move out to the most important part of the session today. In fact, I will have the honor of requesting Smriti ji and the Honorable Minister to really give her remarks. But just very quickly, just wanted to introduce her, and as I see her as a leader, there are two things or two very important ways in which we can actually look at the minister. One is, of course, from a political point of view, I see that she's a giant killer. The second thing is in terms of her leadership as a minister. In fact, I had the first interaction with her in 2017 when she was the minister for HRD, and that's when Mike Porter was here in India. And I think the kind of idea she had was absolutely amazing. The vision that she actually had and the kind of energy she exuded was absolutely tremendous. But I think what she was able to do at that point in time was absolutely stunning as the education minister in terms of like creating the global initiative of academic networks to really propel the idea of research and so on and so forth. But having said that, I think there are two very important pillars that she's handling right now, and they're the most important pillars from my point of view. One is being the Union Minister for Women and Child Development. This is where they become the most important set of people in the country. They are more than 70% of our country, and how do we really push them forward? But having said that, as Union Minister of Textile, she's been somebody who was instrumental in creating the vision of really moving forward with this idea of PPEs. She was somebody who was able to really see the opportunity that exists. The world was going through a crisis, but to really create a system, to really create a team which was able to do this was absolutely tremendous. So I think I have huge regard for what this government has actually been able to do in this area. It is actually about emerging out of the crisis and being a winner. And I see that there is a tremendous possibility for India as we move along. But without further ado, can I request the Honorable Minister to address us today and give her views. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. You've been more than kind, and I congratulate you for surviving my tenure as HRD minister and come out unscathingly out of it, because many said that my ideas at that time itself were too radical. But to take you back a few notches, and not that many of the panelists knew me then, we had the blessings of the Prime Minister to think out the box. And it is in my first tenure as the Minister of Education that we recognized the capacity of technology, the capacity of teamwork, of partnership between civil society, stakeholders, industry leaders, and governance machineries. And how, if you all come together for the larger cause called India, can we do things before a crisis hits the shore of our nation? And I think if I reminisce, one of our contributions at that time when education and technology were to marry each other was a platform called Swayam. Not many of the stakeholders in the textiles industry would know that 6 years ago, when I went to the Honorable Prime Minister and I requested him to bless a project where we indigenously bring together the first Indian MOOCs platform, there were many internationally who actually shrugged off the idea and thought India did not have the capacity. There were many who said that students studying online is not the Indian way of educating themselves. And today we see that with the crisis called COVID-19, Swayam, which was a platform, an engagement launched by the government, today has over 1,000 courses run by the government of India, and students across the country in these troubling times who have leveraged the platform of the government. So government can deliver on quality. Government can lead from the front when you do not foresee a challenge. And I think that the PPE story is one such more defining moment in the governance methodology of the Honorable Prime Minister. Today, when I heard Puneet talk about and Mr. Makkar speak about the future, I also would like to highlight the sense of ease with which Ravi Kapoor brushes aside his contribution to the PPE Indian Revolution. And why I am today doggedly pursuing compliments for him and the entire team of officers in the Ministry of Textiles is we in India do not have the capacity of storytelling which impacts future business growth. There are many who might reduce this study by the Institute of Competitiveness just as one study. I think it is much more. It is the fact that we have an independent think tank which has chronicled the efforts across government, which has produced empirical evidence, weighed it against industry expectations, looked at it from the prism of international standards, and then documented this entire journey quite successfully and articulately, for which, Mr. Kapoor, you have our gratitude. I think that one needs to first reflect on the study for two aspects. One, it brings to light the not only the entrepreneurial capacity of fellow Indians, but I think one also needs to recognize what it brings together is a reflection of trust we have in each other, irrespective of our disposition, either as industry leaders or as entrepreneurs or those who represent the administration. While Mr. Kapoor, Ravi Kapoor, and since I am today compressed between two Kapoors, I will pick the first name wisely. So while Mr. Ravi Kapoor speaks of early morning phone calls to Mr. Shaktivel, to Gautam Nair, anybody who views governance with a prism or a perspective of suspicion would never recognize that a leader such as Mr. Shaktivel or Gautam Nair would respond to a call from an officer at 6 o'clock in the morning with alacrity. I fondly remember when I was in conversation with Gautam Nair or with Priya Thapar, or for that matter, the Lalbhai House, we had in our dialogue a desire to seek what the industry needed, big or small, to bring to a fruition called the PPE suit. And I am Mr. Makkar and Mr. Udeshi on the platform today. The swab testing swab story actually was an afterthought. One has to be very, very blunt about the credit as to where it should go. So while we as a team in textiles were totally focused on waking up everybody across the country, especially members of the AEPC, which is our Apparel Export Promotion Council, and we were hunting down each and every industry leader, big or small, with a factory operational or a business which is shut down, we had a simultaneous team looking at other elements of technical textiles that was needed to complement the PPE story. I particularly remember while we were calling up, as I said, Mr. Shaktivel, Gautam, Priya Thapar, and everybody else that is on this panel today, we had Mr. Dash walking in and telling us that there is also a possibility that while we are focused on the PPE suit, we can also make testing swabs, as Mr. Makkar said, at 10% of the imported cost. And I still remember this room filled with officers. And please recognize, gentlemen, this is the beginning of the pandemic in our country, where people were homebound, we were in a state of lockdown, and everybody's families were telling their loved ones not to venture out. It is in these circumstances that 60 officers, without a care for their own life and their own security, stepped out of their homes every day while buildings were shutting down across the national capital, while offices were shutting down across the country. They stepped out every day for 90 days, Monday to the next Sunday, without a care for themselves or their families that they were going back to every day at the end of work. So while we were all hobnobbing and we decided that the best way to keep our officers safe was to vacate the entire floor, including throughout the furniture from the Mantri's office, so that we could accommodate it for a war room. At the same time, we had one officer sitting on the sidelines thinking, what are the other compliments to the PPE suit? And I remember when Mr. Das particularly walked in and said, I think Mr. Udeshi and Mr. Makkar can do something heavenly. Between me and Ravi, we just looked at him and we said, do what needs to get done. So I think that the human story behind the business called PPE and testing SWOT, that he has the wherewithal to support Mr. Makkar. And at the same time, we had the disposition to reach out to the Institute of Virology to get the authentic testing facilities available. The urge of both these industry leaders to say, can we involve SME segment to see whether they can also produce something? We thought as Indians, nobody thought of themselves while participating in that drive as either a mantri or an officer or an industry leader. And I think quintessentially that is the reason for our success. But as Puneet and Mr. Makkar have pointed out, do we get comfortable or do we look ahead in terms of stockpiling or other elements with regards to technical textiles or how India can grow from here? So as Mr. Ravi Kapoor reminisced that we began from 0 companies, today we are at 1100 plus companies. For PPE suits, we were 2 manufacturers of the N95 masks, and today we are at 200 plus manufacturers of N95 masks. And while, Amit, I think that your study looks at numbers up to the month of May, today I can say, subject to a little bit of a correction, but we have till this day exported over 20 million PPE suits, exported over 40 million N95 masks, domestically produced over 60 million PPE suits, and till October 2020, the numbers were 150 million N95 masks. From 0 in March, that's where we've come to. Now, just to reflect on the possibilities in the coming years, for me, what gives me great joy is the quick turnaround of the garmenting industry. One, there was a modicum of trust between the industry leaders in the government section and the government of India, including the officers, which is why Mr. Shakti Vel or Gautam Nair or Harish Ahuja or the Lal Bhais for that matter, and I must acknowledge that the Lal Bhais were already at advanced stages of production of various technical textiles, equipment and garments. But these leaders who had particularly dedicated their industry only to the manufacturing of garments, they did a turnaround in not less than 15 days. And I remember distinctly Mr. Makkar saying that if I had to do an innovative technological input, let's say like a testing swab, I would need in normal times at least 35 weeks to 40 weeks of development. And the turnaround time in terms of development and innovation for the swab was less than 1 month. So I think the reorientation by our industry in terms of manufacturing processes, I still remember Gautam telling me, if you get me the fabric to even stitch, I still need the machine to do the thermal sealing. And I would not have the financial capacity while I'm trying to fulfill my old garment orders to get that machine in when international borders were sealed. So we spoke to somebody in MEA. We spoke to an industry leader who was nothing to do with textiles, but had a huge treasure chest of CSR money. And we got Gautam and that unlikely industry leader together to say, how many machines do you need? Gautam's desire at that time was only 30 machines. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gautam, but that is the limited number of machines that he needed only for that segment. So this is the detail to which everybody went in and collaborated. So I think that, Amit, if you think that this is a happenstance that we just found our strengths in March, I would like to correct the audience. It's not. I distinctly remember 3 years ago when in my first 1 year of office as textiles minister, I remember going to Mumbai and I remember proffering to the industry this whole theme called technical textiles. I'm glad that industry leaders then 3 years ago humored me. And I remember industry leaders telling me, and Mr. Udeshi was there and Gautam was there 3 years ago in Mumbai. And when we said that, let's look at technical textiles, it's Mr. Udeshi who said, we are right now at the beginning of a race. If we can start now, maybe the futures will belong to us. And 3 years ago, when the industry says, let's look at technical textiles, our biggest challenge then was that we did not have HSN codes for technical textiles. So we began this journey actually of recognizing technical textiles as an emerging industry and giving it a proper administrative position. We brought up to 8 digits HSN codes for around 300 different product categories. In February, and I don't think many people recall this, but in the budget, there was an announcement for the National Technical Textile Mission. Who knew that an announcement in February will actually turn around and fructify in March? So I think there was a need to kind of relook at these steps that were taken, which were taken when a crisis did not loom at us. But as Gautam and Mr. Makkar and Puneet have said, do we wait for the next crisis? Or do we look at opportunity now? And to create that opportunity, to create that sense of trust, the story of PPE and the testing swab is important from 3 perspectives. One, we did not dilute any technical standards. If you recall, there was a huge pressure on the government. There were articles after articles regarding the need to dilute the standards. I am grateful to every industry leader who's joined us today. These industry leaders refused to dilute the international standards. And they said, if we are to make it, let's make it to match international standards. The direction that we took it in was that if we are to dilute international standards, we expose health workers to tragedies which are medical in nature and death. And we together as government and industry representatives resolved that we will not have a single medical frontline worker's death on our hands. Those 15-20 days were horrifying for these industry partners who wanted to maintain standards and government officers who were adamant on not diluting it. And I must here confess that it was the Honorable Prime Minister who backed us in that stage of being adamant. Because we assured the Honorable Prime Minister that our industry will measure up. So I think the underlying theme of trust here is revisited. The second issue why this PPE story is extremely significant is the turnaround time in terms of innovation and manufacturing. I think that is an aspect that needs to be honed in time and again internationally. One, the fact that we met international standards. Two, the fact that we are innovative and our manufacturing processes can turn around in record time. And we are the only industry that came up in a lockdown in the entire world economy. And lastly, we did it either at competitive costs or, in fact, as Mr. Makkar said, 10% of the imported cost. So today, not only have we expanded in size, but we are also competitive with the best in the world in terms of cost. And I think that I can today rejoice in the fact that, yes, the industry and the government came together. And from day one, though Ravi today says that we did not give the industry a single paisa of subsidy, when the sword was hanging on our head, I have to be very blunt here. Nobody in the industry asked for a subsidy. Nobody in government was offering it. It is only post facto that I could one day nudge Ravi Kapoor and say, do you realize that you have actually given birth to a 7,000 crore industry in just 60 days without a single paisa in subsidy? This is something that Shaktivelji will not like. Because he, as an industry leader, has to come forth and keep asking for it. But we cannot shy away from it. We should, in fact, be proud of it. And the second part, Amit, that I'm extremely proud of, that in a lockdown state, we actually have now ensured 5 lakh sustainable direct jobs. That is a part of the PPE and testing swab revolution that has not been actually highlighted. What I'm blessed to have is great industry captains who have joined us today and amazing officers. In my 6 years in administration, I have never seen genuinely our backs against the wall and officers, like I said before, without a care in the world for their own safety, step up. And I think that this story needs to be told again and again, no matter how modest everybody is on this panel, because this will impact the India story. If anybody asks what Atmanirbhar Bharat means, as Gautam had begun in his opening remarks, It is about Indians coming together to answer the national cause. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You made history, and my belief is that history will continue to be made under your leadership and due to your partnership. I'm extremely proud to serve you as minister. This has been one of the defining moments of my own life, let alone my career. Because in the emergence of this industry, I have learned much from you. What you can do for the sake of humanity, what you can do for the sake of your fellow citizens, and what you can do as leaders for your industry. It is for me, and indeed, a privilege and a very proud moment. Today, I use this platform of the Institute of Competitiveness to give you my grateful thanks. You have taught me a lesson in humility, you've taught me a lesson in leadership, you've taught me a lesson in partnership. Thank you so much.
Madam.
Yeah, very fortunate to have you as our minister, ma'am. You have a Midas touch. Your touch is the thing that it has grown so much.
Still not getting subsidies.
No, ma'am. I'm not asking subsidy there.
Madam, so
Just a joke, Shakti Velji, otherwise it'll become a national headline tomorrow. So whoever is listening, this is a common joke between me and Mr. Shakti Vel, has nothing to do with industry policies.
Yes.
I don't want Economic Times to give me a quote tomorrow morning. So I'm clarifying right away.
So, madam, this is very fascinating. In fact, it's been a privilege to write home about this. But just as you say, I would just like to say, like, there are 2 or 3 very dynamic principles that were followed. Like, one was, of course, what you said, like the empathetic view of capitalism. So, in fact, there was this whole huge thing, like how social objectives and economic objectives have to be brought together. In fact, what you did was so powerful because there was a social cause which got in, and then there was an economic objective that was fulfilled. You have impacted lives which are tremendous. I think it is just not about 5 lakh jobs that were there. It is about saving lives of so many other people. It is about making India productive in the long term. That is what it is. I think the national effect of this action is tremendous. It is far more than 7,000 crores, as you are actually saying, because I see the multiplier being far more than what we have actually even talked about. But having said that, I just had a question for you. In fact, there is so much that has happened here. How do you think we can actually replicate this across different sets of industries? Because that's the most important thing to do, because this is going to be the defining movement for creating competitiveness of country, making it more productive and innovative. Madam.
Amit, I think that what Mr. Ravi Kapoor had said at the beginning, we need a partnership that goes across industry and government. My experience in the past 4 years in textiles has been this, that when industry comes to you with a particular proposal or a particular challenge, I've had the distinct privilege of being utterly honest with the industry. They recognize the challenges that we are confronted with as a nation. And I think with that sense of honesty comes a partnership which I cannot describe, but which was reflective in the PPE story. That is why we knew that even if we all have limitations, we can come together and pull in our strengths. And I think the second aspect, as Ravi had said, it is about giving that kind of an ecosystem the free hand. Everybody recognizes their responsibilities, be it constitutional responsibilities of the officers or compliance responsibilities of the industry. So when you have that kind of trust in the people that you're bringing together and give them that space to emerge and step in only when there is an emergency, I think that is why we've borne such good fruits in terms of the production of PPE. And it actually stems right from the top. Can you imagine in March being confronted with that controversy that there is absolutely no capacity? There was scaremongering about PPE manufacturing capacities of India. So can you imagine having that pressure on your head that if you do not produce this in your countrymen and women are going to die? So this was not about only the economics of it. I think why everybody rose to this challenge was because they did not want those deaths of frontline workers on their hands. If they could do something to provide a solution, I think that became a driving force for everybody. So I feel the fact that the Prime Minister backed us, no matter how audacious it looked at that time, and the fact that even when there was public pressure created by some people who wanted standards to get diluted, I think to withstand that pressure by the leadership and give the textile ministry that kind of support so that the willing partners in the industry who wanted to make sure international standards are met had that kind of support. And I also feel the cross-cutting support that we got from all ministries. So I remember Ms. Thapar has joined us today on this platform. Priya Thapar had a problem with one of her banks that was not responding, and every bank branch was shut.
Yes, ma'am.
A conversation with her. We called up the Ministry of Finance. We had the Department of Financial Services then collaborate with Ravi Kapoor and reaching out to an industry partner. And like I said, Gautam's need had nothing to do with the government. He had a willing industry leader wanting to support through CSR money, and the industry leader who supported Gautam had nothing to do with textiles. He was answering a national cause. Or for that matter, when Mr. Dash comes up with the story of Mr. Udeshi wanting to do something audacious, I was used to Mr. Udeshi thinking out of the box suddenly and telling me, I will get this done. So we knew that Mr. Udeshi will take care of whatever he wants to do and support it. So I think that modicum of trust that was built between government representatives and industry really augured well. And like I said, ultimately being backed by a boss during rough times and rough weathers, I think we couldn't have asked for a bigger blessing. So I would, like I said, thank not only everybody who's joined us today, but also the officers that I have had the incredible opportunity of working with. So I don't think, though Ravi says that he's hanging his boots, I can see a lot of people smiling there and hoping to see him after the 31st of December in a personal capacity. So I'm hoping that I can kind of reserve him somewhere and make sure that we benefit from his leadership. I think the fact that you will not have found one single officer of textile outside trying to attract public press attention to themselves speaks volumes about their contribution and their humility.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. And I understand that you have to go for your next meeting. Thanks a lot for this opportunity to interact with you. And I think the country has really gone ahead under your leadership for this ministry. And of course, the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, that's a huge statement that we're actually looking at. So I look forward to meeting you sometime soon in person and really document and update this documentation as we're actually going along. So thanks a lot, madam, for joining us today. It's been a proud privilege and honor to have you with us. In fact, without further ado, we'll just move on to the next part of the session. In fact, I have my very dear friend Anurag, who's the editor-in-chief for Business World, who will be moderating the next session. Anurag, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kapoor, and thank you, Madam Minister. I just want to comment saying that, we talk of agility. The ministry and you as a leader of the ministry has shown that not only private sector has agility when it comes to responding to challenges and opportunity. Actually, government can show the way in being agile. I mean, if you talk to any leader, whether political leader or business leader, they'll tell you the two things that have helped India over the last 8 months are, resilience and agility. I think you've shown both, and we wish you luck as we move forward into 2021. And as I was listening to you, brought in MOOCs as the HRD minister. I'm sure the textile industry will benefit from your leadership over the next few years. So thank you for that. And with that, let me bring in all the speakers. And because we have 30 minutes and we have 8 speakers, I would request all of you to be short and precise and be specific. The minister has already shared how almost $1 billion industry was created in a very short span of time. And Dr. Kapoor has already brought in that if we can do what we've done within this sector, in other sectors of making sure, one, business enterprises are a social enterprise. Second is to build capabilities that create sustainability and a business, if I may say. So let me get each one of you for an opening comment based on what you did in your capacity to contribute and be part of this movement. And if at all you have a comment to add to what the minister said. So we can start with Ms. Thapar, and then we can go around the house. Ms. Thapar, your opening comments.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister and everyone in the Ministry of Textiles for all the support that they gave us. We would not have been able to make the PP suit if it wasn't for their help. So, I mean, we're really extremely grateful for all their help. And I mean, I really don't know what else to say. And Because in another way, I have to also say JCT wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. So,
yeah, and Ms. Thapar, I heard a bit saying that you have a problem with one of the banks and how it was started.
yes.
We always, I do a daily show on a leading news channel, and I encourage my participants to showcase positive stories, because we are so cynical about the government. Look at what the government has done this. And I can tell you my own moments of truth with the government. So I think we have to give the due credit where it is. So you must talk about the fact how, because we only hear about the conservatism of banks and how the ministries are not helping. But look at what, you articulated just now.
JCT wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Madam and the Ministry of Textiles. And in fact, everyone I meet, I say the same thing. I mean, I cannot be more grateful to the Government of India, the Honorable Minister, and everyone in the Textile Ministry for this. I mean, one, they helped us so much, and two, the fact that we still exist today.
Thank you so much. And, now we hope that in the next 30 to 90 days, hopefully COVID goes away. Nobody knows when. Hopefully, definitely there'll be a vaccine, and the Government of India will make sure it's distributed well. But the need for PPE kits will continue to be there domestically and internationally. What are the other possibilities that you see that this new environment has brought in?
See, sir, our PPE suit was basically a scaled-down version of the NBC suit which we were making. And the prime focus was on reusability and comfort in our tropical climate, and at the same time providing protection. So we also, are you talking about mainly on PP suits or other technical textiles?
Both. I'm saying these are new products. You did very fast product development. You did very fast supply chain, and you produced it. But I'm saying, considering what you did here, what do you see as other possibilities that may now be visible in the environment?
So we also are dealing, we are doing a large number of other technical textiles. I will just ask my fellow R&D development, Mr. Dillo, just to say a few words on this, on our developments.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So basically, personal protective equipment, this COVID, initially, these personal protective equipments were not being used in the Malay industry. Now, since the personal protective equipment has been highlighted by this COVID scare, I think now the adoption of these particular equipments in other sectors is also going to increase. Now, this is where the industry needs to contribute and develop further in this sector.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for keeping your time, because time is our biggest asset. Lockdown has showed us the time is what matters. And if you use your time well, you can achieve whatever you wish to. Let me bring in Mr. Mahesh Kudav. Mr. Kudav, we can have you on screen. And, your company has again emerged as a beneficiary of what has happened, and you help people. All of you have not just built a business. You, as Amit said, you helped save lives. And again, what a policy intervention can do, create a new industry overnight, help people, look at what has happened. So clearly, when the Prime Minister talks of Atmanirbhar and the clarion call to be self-reliant, he's raising the consciousness of every Indian entrepreneur and every policymaker to think out of the box, to think big, and not only think of India as a market, but think of other markets also as a possibility. Mr. Kudav, your company clearly also in some way led this revolution. Tell us a bit about how you see the future. Mahesh?
Well, thank you, Anurag. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, Mahesh, you are.
Yeah. Well, I have witnessed this journey because I was in this industry for close to 3 decades. And in last 3 decades, until 9 months back, we were producing close to 50,000 units of N95 mask a day. And in 9 months, we have peaked from 200,000 to 1 million units of N95, which we are exporting. So it's with the Prime Minister's vision that we should be a mass exporter. I have seen the Ministry of Textile officials working with passion, guiding me or guiding the industry from an export restriction phase to export free zone. All these products that we did were not only there was no compromise on quality, the deliveries were there, but what was most important was that most of the technical textile workers are women employees. And our honorable minister actually is minister for women employment and technical textiles. So at the peak of COVID, we had more than 1,000 women workers coming out of their home, working, and the officers who are working from the from the Ministry of Textiles did a lot of mentoring for us from the point of view of seeing that there wouldn't be any COVID cases, from the point of view of arranging meals, because there were real challenges to that nitty gritty, that travel was a problem. And in spite of that, today we have achieved about 1 million units of manufacturing per day. The reason that I see, that how do we go further from here, and what we could do to take this industry in a long-term perspective. One thing is, strictly, as the several people said, the subsidies and grants were not there. And I think that the intern entrepreneurs are capable to arrange their own arrangements, because subsidy and grants not being there still didn't cripple any of the industries that I knew personally. The second
And
thing that happened was,
subsidies and grants are not the best way to start also.
absolutely, absolutely.
As they say, if you want someone to eat a fish, don't fish it for them. Teach them how to fish.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Catch the fish, so to say. So clearly, the minister in the ministry created an enabling environment, encouraged, took away the bottlenecks, and helped you kind of create something on your own, which is possibly more sustainable. I mean, there is a lot of talk about farm laws, and there is a farmers' education. But what the farm bills are doing is actually making the farmers more, kind of prosperous in the medium and long term, because you'll get a better yield. You're not dependent on a subsidy. A minimum support price is a subsidy, whether we call it or not. So clearly, the ministry has put up the right enabling framework and the right policy and the right support to be able to move fast on approvals, quality assurance, and any approvals that may be needed from the ministry. So go on, Mahesh.
Yes. So as I was saying, in fact, I have seen the Ministry of Textile officers work so passionately for the country that as industry, we felt that if they could be so passionate, we have to match their passion and work for the nation. So there was no subsidy, there were no grants, unlike other countries, which in the same phase for producing N95 masks, they have granted immense amount of grants and subsidies. What they did was quality mentoring. They did tremendous amount of quality mentoring, whether it was seeing that things are as per systems or not, whether the quality certificates are there for every lot or not, what they could support us from the point of view of getting critical test equipments, what they could do from getting quality approvals. So I would say that quality mentoring was one of the reasons that the industry could rise so quickly. The second thing and most important thing is that they set a code of use so that the domestic market knew exactly what to use product, and that code for use created such a big market from the domestic perspective that there was already a market for all manufacturers who would produce the PPE kits. So one was quality mentoring, second was code for use, which created a market. And in turn, this created large amount of employment. And particularly in textile sector, women employment is very high. And when a woman employment or empowerment is there, I think it makes a big difference in the localized growth.
Yeah. Thank you, Mahesh. We have to get other people in, and we have only about 11 and a half minutes left. And clearly, you saved lives, and as a lot of experts would say, that you have been a social enterprise. I know you're a profitable enterprise and possibly have benefited financially, but you've saved lives, and that's what matters. Mr. Udeshi was being referred to again and again. Mr. Udeshi, what is the roadmap you see in 2021 for the ecosystem?
Thank you. I think for me, this has been one of the most memorable journey. One on PPE suit, and second was on swap. Madam did say about how we made swab in 30 days, but in actual, from the conceptual stage, from 0 date, the swab was delivered in the marketplace to government on the 10th day. It's an unbelievable story of partnership between Reliance, Johnson & Johnson, and Ministry of Textile. I think I have never seen this thing happening. Regarding PPE suits, I think when we acquired Alok Industry in Silvassa, it's an interesting phase. I think we used to make a fashion garment, which were worth few thousand rupees per garment or whatever it was. It had a commercial value. When we were told that the PPE suits, when being imported from China, some of the doctors refused to use them, saying that those are not foolproof and it cannot stop penetration of blood and virus into the system. So we need Indian entrepreneur to give us the safe mode of PPE suit. I think we took that as a challenge. For us, this was not a commercial transaction. I think this was a question of saving of life. It was a question of need of the hour. It was the question of need for the nation. We converted all our garmenting machine, producing fashion garment into PPE suit. We source those PPE material from our own because we ourselves produce polypropylene, supply this to people who make polypropylene fabric, which are coated and then converted into garment. I think in an overnight basis, I think in an 8 days time period, we converted entire garmenting facility into making PPE suits, and at peak of the production, we produce and we continue to produce 100,000 PPE suits per day, which was almost like a 1/4 of the national production of PPE suits. And those were delivered. I think we were importing PPE suits from China at 2,000 to 2,500 rupees per PPE suit. We manufactured and supplied less than 500 or 600 rupees of PPE suit. So this was the one case. And the second case, very interesting case, was a swab where I was also personally involved. I took it as a personal challenge. In life, everything is not in terms of money. Something
Absolutely.
you do, something you want to do beyond making money. So the swab were imported into India at 18 rupees a swab from China. And
understood. Mr. Udeshi, it's fascinating to hear you and see the passion that you bring and the conviction. But I have to get everyone in, and I have a hard stop at 4:30, which is so
Okay.
Grateful for your comments, and kudos to you with what you've done. Thank you so much. Let me bring in Mr. Maloy Chandran Chakrabarti, who's the Jute Commissioner, Government of India. Mr. Chakrabarti, again, if we have to be really Atmanirbhar, we have to start using the cluster-based approach to development. We have to start using materials where we have an advantage, and which will also create, if I may say, livelihoods for the, people who are involved in producing jute. So, how do you see jute getting intertwined with this revolution?
Let me just clarify. I am here because during this entire exercise, I was the textile commissioner. So I've come in because of this. In fact, so jute actually would not have too much of a role, even though they have tried making some masks with jute. But I mean, the primary product still remains the textile PPE, the mask which Mr. Kudav and his company is making. In fact, the last time I visited Mumbai as a textile commissioner from Calcutta, because I was holding dual charges at that point of time, I actually had a meeting sometime in, I think, March 13th or 14th, where we discussed the issue of production very, I should say it was a very, what should I say, free and fair exchange of views, because there were still not,
100% belief.
The 100% belief was not there. But I must compliment that entire team who are here, because I'll just take 1 minute of your time. I'll conclude because I know there's not too much of a time. But one thing is that I find that it is probably one of the earliest successful efforts at Atmanirbhar Bharat in the present cycle. Then there was a complete teamwork. We had great coordination between teams. I mean, I've had my team at waking up at 2 o'clock in the night to facilitate things. Then the roles were earmarked well and very suitable persons were deployed. We picked up people who were good, who knew how to work, how to deliver. In fact, Mr. Okandia is also there. He's from Central Silk Board. Even his team because we three were coordinating. Mr. Okandia, myself, and our Secretary Textiles Committee, Mr. Ajit Chavan, we were coordinating. So it was a fascinating experience. And then we had an excellent support team in the field. We had emergency control rooms. And I'll tell you one example should stand out. Of my people, one officer was there, Mr. Ponnusamy. I mention it again and again in various seminars. He was with Textiles Committee. He had a son who was suffering from cancer. Yet he took the pains to go to the factory allocated to him daily and ensured that the work is done. And after that, he went for his whatever treatment that is the radiation or whatever treatment was. So, and another point I must tell you, the government this time, we had worked not just on paper, we used social media to the fullest. There were 3 or 4 WhatsApp groups. Instructions were given for critical situation, critical activities on WhatsApp. Coordination was through WhatsApp. And we use this modern tool to improve efficiency, break break the barriers of what is there in government functioning. And I must thank, of course, Mr. Amit Kapoor for his trying to chronicle the efforts. This is not a very,
kudos to you. You know, we're always saying in India, we blame the bureaucracy for everything. We blame the ministries for lack of, but it shows a truly collaborative way between the ministry, the industry players, large players like Reliance, Winners. So really the collaborative efforts. And, when you're talking, the kind of approach you brought in bringing everybody together and also making sure communication. You talked about everyone who can deliver. So clearly, I think each one of you should get more time. I would request Dr. Amit Kapoor to start chairing the session so that everybody can get time. I have a hard stop at 4:30, so I will take your excuse, but it's fascinating. And we'll individually at Business World come to each one of you and talk to you about how this movement has happened to build this industry to $1 billion industry in 8 months from zero. So really, this augurs very well for India. It augurs very well for other sectors. So kudos to each one of you, especially the government enablers, the Secretary to the Government of India in nouns, your Secretary Jute, but Secretary Textiles and everyone who's been involved in all the private sector players, the industry bodies. I think what you've done has been really a case study for how industry and the government can, in a very short time, show agility and output. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Amit Kapoor, and I congratulate all of you and wish you luck in your endeavor to continue what you've started in 2020, in 2021. Back to you, Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Anurag, for helping us moderate, but I'll quickly move on to Shaktivelji. Shaktivelji, the minister has been, she did tease you for the whole subsidy idea and whatever, but your view as to how did this really come about? What more can be done? And where do you see India moving forward on this?
Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Amit. I can say, I've been in this field for the last 40 years that I'm taken over the chairman a 4th time in AAPC. But this is a challenging time. I've taken over in January, and when Mr. Ravi Kapoor called me and said, Shakti, we need PPE suit. As I said, sir, we don't make anything. Then I called Gautam Nair. He said, Gautam, we had to alert all our exporters to do this. Then Gautam said, Shakti, the important thing is the tape attaching machine that we don't manufacture in India. We have to import, but we have only few machines in India. Then same way when we have talked about the fabric and other things, they said yes, we have to import a lot of things. Then we conducted 5 webinars in the APC within a spell of 3 weeks. First, start with how to manufacture PPE kits. I think the first webinar itself, there are about 600 people participated, and all the 600 went into the producing the PPE kits. Now we have about 1,200 people are manufacturing the APC. I'm very proud to say the people really not thought about the money, that they thought about the service to our people. So then we find out we want N95 mask. Then we find there is no N95 mask produced or a machine produced in India. We had to import. You can't believe that in Tirupur itself, they imported within 15 days by air 30 N95 masks. Each machine cost 1 crore to 1 crore 50 lakhs. Now Tirupur itself, we manufacture about $500,000, 50 lakhs pieces per day N95 masks. Same way that 2 and 3 ply. So again, then when we're talking about the testing standard, we have conducted 2 webinars, because testing standard is important because we don't get paid. So I could say that all the exporters of India were all in this field for awarded exporters. They put their whole heart and the time and started manufacturing. And I could say here, Gautam is the pioneer in doing this because he was learning everything. So we learned everything from Gautam Nair. So he taught us how to go about it. So because it's again, it's a teamwork. We all in the APC as executive committee members, we shared each thing, and we shared all our experience. And it's all done within, I can say, 45 days. Then in the 60th day, we have started producing the number of. Then we have Dr. Sundaram. See, we are all here. Only we started now, but Dr. Sundaram started doing this manufacturing of technical textile and medical textile maybe 15 years. He is doctor himself. So I used to call him now and then, Sundaram, how to avoid this, how to do this. Then he used to tell me that, Anna, you have to go for this, you have to do this. So all this seminar he participated, he taught every exporters how to do this. I should appreciate here that Chitra also played a vital role for testing the garment, testing the fabric, approving it. They did it very quickly. They did it. So all the teamwork could. So then I should here, of course, the Minister of Textile is the leader, real true leader for us, because she worked day and night, and of course Ravi Kapoor, Mr. Secretary. Then I should mention here Mr. Nihar Das Ranjan. He used to call every day. He said that, Shakti, what is the progress? How many people are coming? He used to attend the 2-3 webinar with us to try to tell us how to go about it. And when there is a ban on PPE, export of PPE garments and N95 masks, of course, Ministry of Textile helped us and talked to the Commerce Ministry and lifted the ban. Now we are the second largest producer of medical textiles. So credit goes to Honorable Madam, then the Ministry of Textile, and all our industry leaders and industry friends. Thank you, Mr. Kapoor, for giving this opportunity. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab. Sundaramanji, like your name came back.
Amitji?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes. So your part of the story as to what really happened and how did you really move forward and really attack this idea and really making it a successful initiative?
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll make this very quick. At the outset, I joined the others in thanking the Honorable Minister, the Secretary, but particularly the foot soldiers, Mr. Das, Mr. Balram Kumar, and everybody at MOT, who are the guys calling at 12 o'clock in the night. As Mr. Shaktivel said, and I thank him for his kind words, it was a partnership. The technical textile guys like me and the ITA members who I represent were the ones who made the fabric. Without us, there would be no PPE. An entire lamination industry sprung up from nowhere, and we repurposed our machines to do that. There were very few people in this country like Punitji from Arvind and others who straddled both the garmenting and the technical textile industry. But otherwise, it was people who were making fabric, and then, of course, people who were making the garments in large scale like AEPC. For the first 1 month, it was the technical textile players who were actually holding fort. We were doing something like 2,000, 3,000 pieces, but in the critical time when every single piece of PPE was being counted on a daily basis, it were the technical textile manufacturers who came inside. The larger story would not have been possible without the beautiful cooperation that we had with the AEPC manufacturers, because they brought in scale into manufacturing processes. We brought in the fabric knowledge, and it was a collaborative effort without which we would not have reached where we have reached today. And it's a work in progress. As a technical textile industry leader, I would say that for me, what has happened is that our AEPC and our garmenting industry has recognized that they have got a lot of Indian sources to much of the technical textile fabric needs that they have. So that is a paradigm shift going far beyond PPE manufacturing, and which I think will create a composite, high value added textile industry, right from the fabrics and from the scratch to the converters who finish the finished products and take it outside. And that's, for me, the longer game, going beyond this remarkable PPE success story that we are seeing right now. I think everybody pitched in. Like Mr. Shaktivel said, a critical kudos should go to Citra, because without Citra, there would have been nothing. Because at least there was one guy in the country who had actually calibrated his equipment on Nelson Labs in the US, who knew what 16603 and 16604 was. And I think we have to really appreciate them also. End of the day, everybody came together, Indian Jugaad, organism, spirit, whatever you call it, success happened. But I think what's happened is now we have started believing more in ourselves. A lot of good things are happening. I think the story that Madam said has to happen. We need to sell the India story hard. We need to go out there and say, like an Indian techie, you meet a guy in San Francisco and if you're Indian, they think you're smart, right? Like that, we need to walk across the world and take our PPE and say, oh, you're Indian, you're great. So that's what we need to work towards. And I think that's where everybody, all the industry leaders are headed. Thank you for the opportunity. You're muted, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sundaramanji. This is very, very kind. But then this is where I have to get Niharji back into the discussion. So Niharji, I think you are being really touted as one of the biggest foot soldiers. You were probably the general here in terms of really getting things off the ground. How do you really think this momentum can actually be sustained over a period of time and doing newer sets of things? Over to you, Niharji.
Thanks, Dr. Kapoor. Actually, I was just dragged into the whole thing because I happen to look after the technical textile division in the ministry. So it's incidental, but a lot of things have already been told by various speakers before me. So I'll not elaborate on those things. A few things I will tell what has not been told and what has been my personal involvement or experience in that. I would not forget first Dr. Vasudevan of Citra. Probably the journey started with that. The first thing when Secretary Health, in fact, the person who spoke to me on an evening at around 10:30 when the SOS was given. So next day morning, I first discussed with Dr. Sundaraman and Dr. Vasudevan, and then the journey started from there. Nobody knew, as Minister told, nobody knew. And about mask, very soon, and there are two things, there are two entrepreneurs who are present here who were prepared. One was Mrs. Priya Thappar, who already knew because they had supplied similar kind of things in past. So she knew about it, although their standard was a little different. It's an oven class. And Mr. Kudab knew he was already into the N95 mask. Except apart from that, all others were novices at that point of time. So, but the things which I would like to tell, which are learning lessons, probably some management, it's not economic study, it's a study in government, good governance and management. And we are writing some reports on that from the ministry itself. One is all operations. I must give credit to the political leadership of Honorable Prime Minister as well as Minister, because she's trying to be too humble and keeping things to herself. Both leaders provided, the directive was very clear that transparency at no point of time should be compromised. Absolute transparency. Whatever you do should be in public domain. Nothing is hidden. If you are doing something wrong or if you are doing something different, bring it to the public domain. Tell we are trying to do something different and record it. You know, in government operations, things in retrospect are always analyzed and faults are found out. We ensured that, and we did overtime. We had to work a lot of overtime work. It was painful to see that transparency is maintained. And the government did a great thing by creating an empowered group, which has not been highlighted here. The group consisted of persons, the secretaries of repute, and who conducted all their discussions. All meetings were in video conference mode, recorded. And the representative from Prime Minister's office and Cabinet Secretary are present throughout, monitoring what's happening. And be it the technical fixing of the technical specification, conducting laboratory at the test, conducting various tests in the laboratories. Then the principle that we adopted in defining a unique ID, that is linking between the garment tested and approved to the produced goods. The payments or all the payments, the way the payment, the grievances are attended. Then next, the not but the least is fixing supply order to the capacity. Was a very transparent and a very methodical approach. Nobody was favored. Nobody was given any undue favor. Nothing. Not also. Nobody was giving any kind of a not you know me, I know you. That not that kind of thing was not given. It was a crowdsourced. Another thing is in learning is a government, what they did, the government fixed a fixed price. They said this is the price, whoever wants to come can come in. The price was kept reasonably well so that the new manufacturers can dare to come in. They can invest, many of them had to buy machineries, capital goods for a kind of a scale that was assured to them. So the fixing the price and making it in right time payment, and the payments are monitored. All grievances are monitored by the empowered group. With all emails were attended. There was not a single email or a WhatsApp message which was ignored. Whether I can do it or I cannot do it, that's a different thing. But nobody was ignoring that message, and everybody was politely refused. Whoever there was a problem, we very politely expressed them our inability or told where they lie, where they can improve. That kind of a thing is something unprecedented. We normally do not do that in government. So it is a learning experience for us as well as for the whole setup. All the stakeholders, industry as well as government. Second is, in learning experiences, the government industry, if there is absolute selflessness, if the government is ready to handhold, go beyond the comfort zone, our industry is always ready to come up and fulfill whatever demand is placed upon it. And many times I've seen industry is not always into profit. Profit is a motive where the industry has to work on. Ultimately, they have to make money and then have a cash flow. But industry did not ask us for a price. They did not negotiate for a price. They said, whatever you give, we are ready. The price is not a factor here. Particularly Mr. Kudal, the price was fixed. He initially said, sir, I may have to suffer a loss if there is no quantity or there is a problem. We should go ahead. He said, okay, I'm going ahead. And that made the standard price for all N95 masks throughout the country, throughout the period. And this has been the standard so far. The cost might have come down later on, but at a difficult time, he supported. And when a lot of people complained to various forums in the government, we had to support, saying that this is the price at which nothing can be done. It's a difficult time, you have to support. And we had even gone up to the high courts and National Pharma Pricing Authority, where we stood to our ground. Then there was another phase where there was a lot of pressure from the industry asking us to open up the exports. And we had almost monitored, almost on daily basis. We are monitoring the production, the exports, the demand and whatever. And making a balance between the industry's demand for going for opening up exports, also the apprehension of the other parts of the government that the prices may go up or there may be a glut in the market. That was a challenge which we take, and then Secretary and I just went ahead keeping the risk upon our shoulders. We said, okay, let us go ahead. We'll see something which can be done. And all throughout, there was one voice who was standing solidly behind us, was our minister. I must admit it without any inhibition. She was always giving assurance to go ahead, I am behind you. Anything happens, we'll see. There is a risk, but we will handle the risk. And another thing which is the way the journey continues, as Dr. Sundaraman said, it's something in making. It's just started, it's not over yet. The world has now noticed and taken a tremendous interest in the PP interest in India, particularly in last fortnight. I had three conferences with different parts of the country, parts of the world, showing their interest in developing and also procuring PPEs from India. There was one with Walmart a few days back, where the senior director of Walmart was there from United States. And he told in the discussion that India probably happens to be, US happens to be the largest importer of any HMAS from India, not China. It's India now taking over. And he was assuring me that the quality which FDA or what is that, CDCS, that the regulatory part, they are confirming that the quality is good. There is no doubt about the quality. So it's a thing of pride. And we had another discussion last week with the government of Germany, as well as the British High Commission officer came to our ministry. We had a discussion. His letter is right on my table. All these people are taken note, and then now considering India as one of the major reliable sources for PPEs for the world. So we should not lose the opportunity. We are working on that under National Technical Mission and outside. And the challenge is now how to fulfill their aspirations and keep up the flag of the country high. So these three things I would like to flag. The journey continues. We'll certainly go ahead and have a lot to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Niharji. Like, this is, as the journey continues, and you very importantly said it. Sivaji, I have to come to you here. What more do you think needs to be done to make this journey more successful and really achieve the targets that we are really looking at, or what India can actually achieve through this? Sivaji, over to you.
Thank you. So a lot has been said on PPE and how we came about. Kudos to the entire Ministry of Textiles and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for making it happen. The Minister Smriti Irani ji, the Secretary Kapoor, and Deputy Secretary Mr. Dash, all of them worked with us as well as their teams, which is what made it happen. I think more than Atmanirbhar, I think this is a classic example of Sahyog between the government and the industry, and that enormous amount of trust that we had. For example, when Mr. Kapoor asked me, we had one of the highest numbers of seam sealing machines in the country, and well over 100. And he said, you can ramp up production the fastest. And this was very, very early April. And he said, can I get some production out in 10 days or 5 days? I said, I don't have the fabric. I don't know. I don't have the technical specifications, nor do I have the seam sealing tapes. We need to procure all of these, but we would produce. He said, can you start ordering all of these? And I said, I don't even have a purchase order or anything, any documentation that you want me to produce. And here you are asking me to step up and produce. But we collaborated. We started ordering raw materials even before the government started placing any orders on us. So that was a level of trust and faith with which we at industry worked with the government, and we spent money well before we even had any clarity on all the documentation and other things which are required. We started producing the garments by April 12th or something like that, and we quickly ramped up to about 25,000 plus PPEs a day. So enormous amount of cooperation, collaboration, that Sahyog between government and industry, which is what will take us further. In not just textiles business, textiles industry, but any industry for the country. In the PPE space itself, I think as a country, we need to move forward and talk about, breaking down PPEs into various level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 kind of, PPE gowns. Why make one PPE for all applications? So we need to have all the tech specs prescribed going forward. We need to take it to the next level rather than be content as a country to be at these levels, happy with our production of PPE. we really need to see, what all different kinds of garments do we need to make? Can we standardize the specifications, keeping the comfort of the doctors and the medical fraternity in mind, so that they wear it for 12 hours? Would they be happy wearing it, and yet it delivers the protection? Can there be renewable, reusable PPE, so that it doesn't go and clog the landfills, so that the next generation PPEs are not as polluting, so to speak, the country? So those kind of next level, how do you do a PPE recycling? So these kind of things also we need to really think about and take it to the end state, that is the conclusion. So that's on the PP side, but more importantly, can we have this level of Sayog in other products that we want India to be, Atmanirbhar in? And whether it is, technical textiles, whether it is man-made fiber-based project, these are all far more complicated than PPs, because the entire value chain has to be ready. And there are many, many things that needs to be done. There are certain members from the department, Ministry of Textiles. There are people from the industry. I think a much bigger level of collaboration has to happen if we need to see success in these. I would say a breakthrough has been made in the PPE industry. A lot of that was possible because people in the industry, people in the government took that leap of faith for one particular reason, that is the country. And right, we said we'll put aside everything. In fact, our factories were shut. We were worried about, whether some of our customers will go bankrupt, where will the money come from? We had to pay wages to our workers. There were so many other headaches that we were going through, but we put that aside and we said, what, this is required for the country, we will start making it. And we went ahead and started investing in PPs and the rest is history. Like that, we need to, put aside some of our differences, put aside some of our current problems, and see what best we could do if we really want to build this industry to the next level. And that's that. The PPE story has really laid the foundation for this. It requires active management. I think the leadership displayed by the Ministry of Textiles was exemplary, and that leadership, if it continues, I think Indian textile industry can go places. Thank you.
And thank you, Sivaji. I think this is where it is. So you very powerfully said cooperation and collaboration and sahyog, so that is where it is. So if you are able to get that together across different sets of industries, we can really create a momentum towards Atmanirbhar Bharat things. So Rajit ji, without further ado, I should actually get you into the conversation. In fact, from here, I would like to ask Puneet ji, Priya ji, Sandeep ji, and Gautam ji to make their closing remarks for exactly 30 seconds after Rajit ji has actually made his remarks. Rajit ji, over to you.
Good evening, Amit ji, and all the participants. I am in Bangalore, and as you know that Bangalore is a very big, major hub of apparel and garment making. Initially, what I would like to say that although many good things have already been said, but two things which came to my mind, which I want to bring to your knowledge, that in the private sector, there is a lot of apprehension about the working of the government system. So how they will do, on how they will interact, and whether the payment will happen or not, and all those things. So I just wanted to narrate one of the incidents when I talked to this Wildcraft company. He said that we have never engaged with the government, and we have a very bad sort of idea about the government system. So a lot of apprehension. But I told him that you will enjoy working with us. You will see that once you have started working with us, and you will see that in 24 into 7, you will, whatever problem is with you, we will be able to resolve that. So after a few days, he said that, okay, I was totally wrong. And I don't know whether the other industry people also have the same idea or same change in the perception of the government system. So this is what I wanted to point. And second thing is that in the crisis, the government system works very well. Otherwise, it is a very inefficient system. Everybody says the government is very inefficient. Nobody. But whenever the crisis happens, either it is a management of Kumbh or maybe some other crisis, it works very smoothly, and nothing stops it from working very efficiently. Thirdly, since we were working on the ground, there's a lot many things which I can tell you as a story, but it is not time that I can explain each and everything. But at least for me, one thing also was a learning experience, that it all boils down to coordinations. Because when we were convincing these people to start working on the manufacturing of this PP, lot of problems happened from the people, from the police department, from the local administration, from the even the people's representative. In some area, people's representative block the work, that we will not allow to function this company because this may further increase the infection. So we have to convince all those people. So once we coordinated with all these stakeholders or in people organization, things started working very well. So, and thirdly, I never been to this apparel and garmenting manufacturing unit. I had the opportunity to visit all the big players in the Bangalore, and although our sector is entirely different, sales sector is entirely different thing. We are not in that area, but that has given us a lot of other ideas also, how the silk can be utilized for this say mask making, or even the biotechnology field, where all the genetic changes can be done in the, basically silk is a protein. So if you can change some biotechnological intervention, do some technological intervention, some remedy, some unique product can be derived from the silk protein. So this is what I wanted to say. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajeevji. But just one telling question that I wanted to ask Puneetji. Puneetji, everybody's saying, like, in crisis, we are all able to come together. Now the question is, how do we really make it as a success story across different sets of industry, across different areas? What do you think we can do? Like one or two things that we should do as a country, as industry, as stakeholders, moving forward. Puneetji, over to you.
I think we'll be all buoyed by this success that of having achieved what we have. And I think it's all about, as I said earlier, stepping out of our comfort zone. I think personally, I feel that the stars are all aligned in terms of, all the things, the groundwork to be done, the experience of having, done things successfully in the not so distant past. And, the emergence of India and the need for India as an alternative to China globally. I think all these things augur very well for the industry to sort of make India into a hub, and that is all supported by a very forward-thinking administration. So I think all the ingredients are there, and it would be disappointing if we were to not achieve after having all this in place. And I remain extremely confident that, a few years down the line, we will be, talking about, this period as a defining period for the industry and us having achieved quite substantial things going forward.
Thank you, Puneetji. Priyaji, over to you. What more do you think we should do very quickly in your 30 seconds, please? You're on mute.
Okay. So what I can say is it seemed like all the stars were aligned at the right place, and we got the government, thanks to them, and industry, everyone came together at the right time. And we were able to create this wonderful industry. As Madam said, thanks to ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Priyaji. Gautamji, what more do you think we can do across the country? And what are the motivations that we should actually build in or imbibe into our ecosystem?
Amit, I feel hugely privileged to have played whatever small role I played in the development of this PPE industry in India. And I think all of us should take great pride in what we managed to achieve. Having said that, as Rajat pointed out just now, that was a crisis situation. In India, we have shown so often in the past, when we have our backs to the wall, we work very well in crisis situations. Going forward, I take Puneet's point that the stars may be aligned, the opportunity is there. But, somewhat ruefully we say in so many industries in India, in the past, we have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. We must learn from what we did in PPE and not miss this opportunity. and we should take some of the coordinating mechanisms which were put together formally and informally, learn from that. Put a coordination committee, involve Puneet, who heads the CIS Committee on Technical Textiles, Sundar, who's looking after a large technical textiles association, Government of India. Focus on clear outcomes and have clear coordination between milestones, sort of time-driven milestones set which are carefully coordinated. In other words, do it in mission mode. Don't wait for the next crisis to come and we're all going to work together.
Thank you, Gautam. And Sandeep ji, last thing from you, like, what do you think we can do?
Thanks so much. So it all, just listening to everyone, I think it comes down to the vision and the focus. So clearly the people that can make it happen are all on this call, and painting a vision and a much bolder vision. The second is really focus, because we cannot do everything. We cannot be everything to everyone, right? So the focus on, and we've discussed the end-to-end value chain, not just basic PPE. How do you take it to the next level? How do you raise the bar? That's one. Number two, we've spoken about global stockpiles of PPE. Why don't we have that bold of a vision? You rightfully said, Mr. Das. And now, imagine if you have the credibility of the Walmart behind you, that is known to be one of the largest authority on scale and value. It's a stamp of scale and value. So if you have Walmart kind of authorities or organizations behind you, if you have countries like Germany that can give you a stamp of quality, if Germany accepts something, it has to be quality. If Japan accepts something, it has to be quality. So how do you take this and gain momentum to say we will become the global suppliers of all things PPE, basic as well as advanced? And then the third is, I think, again, adhering to globally harmonized quality standards, really driving towards those, and bringing in fresh design thinking, not just what has been working, but really using the design thinking to think through breathability, the trade-offs, breathability and safety, right? So how do you make it efficient and safe? So I think those few things, if we do well, I think it's going to be economically very good for the country, and it's going to put a stamp of India on the world, in terms of things that matter the most. Imagine being the global health insurer or global insurer to the world. I think it's a very powerful vision.
Awesome, Sandeep. And I think this has just been a fascinating discussion. In fact, I just like to make one statement, this is where India can really move forward to being a more productive, more innovative in a country. In fact, we have moved from being a factor-driven to an efficiency-driven, and this is where we are showing that we can actually be an innovation-driven economy in the future. How we can actually bring various sets of objectives together, and once we have the leadership, we have the will, we can do it. But I think we just need to really push it forward beyond the crisis and take it into the next realm of success. And possibly, this could be one of the biggest ideas which can drive us to becoming a $5 trillion economy in the years to come. So thanks a lot to everybody. Thanks to Madam Smriti Irani-ji. Thanks to Ravi Kapoor-ji. Thanks to Nihar Das-ji and everybody else who joined us together, really joining this conversation. As a next step, we will be documenting this and creating a paper out of this, which we'll be sharing with all of you. Thanks a lot for being here today. It's been a privilege to host you and have you with us. Thank you. Thanks a lot, please.
Well done, Amit ji and everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.